This is part 4 in our Celebrate series. And in this part, we're going to look at yet another thing that we have solely because of Christmas. Another amazing, wonderful thing that's in our lives because Jesus came. And my hope and prayer today is the same as it's been throughout this entire series, that as we look at this thing that we have in our life, this amazing gift we have, that we'll come to that point where we're like, man, I had to celebrate Christmas this year. Yeah, there was other stuff going on that I would rather not have had. Maybe there's some people I'd rather not have been around. But in spite of all that, I had to celebrate Christmas this year because as I thought about what I have, solely because Jesus showed up in our world and gave us what he gave us, I had to celebrate. Man, I was just driven to celebrate. So that's where we're going to head. But where we need to start today is with a rather painful subject, and that is the subject of broken promises. I wish that Christmas was the one season in the year when we didn't have to, consider broken promises. It was the one time in the year where everybody kept their word, where everybody did what they said they were going to do, where every promise was something you could bake bread on. I wish that was the case, but it's not the case, as you well know. Perhaps for some of us, it's the worst time of the year, it seems, for broken promises. And I don't want to dwell there long, but let's just pause for a moment and think, why is it that people break their promises to us? I mean, yeah, you could say because they're jerks, but I mean, what's underneath all of that? Assuming it's not, they're not malicious people. Why do people break their promises to us? I think there are two reasons that it happens. First, sometimes people break their promises to us because they're not committed to keeping the promise. And by that I mean it's not keeping the promise is not the highest priority. So when they made their promise to us, it was perhaps more of an intention, right? This is what I'm going to do, unless something else comes up, right? Or this is what I'm going to do unless the price gets too high. My dad tells a story about this guy who's on this phone to his girlfriend, and he's telling her like how committed he is to her, and she's like, "Listen, I would do anything for you. I would climb the highest mountain. I would cross the hottest desert. I would swim the widest ocean, and I'll be over to see you as soon as it stops raining." Right? He's like telling her all this stuff, but it's not really true because he's not even willing to brave a little rain to go spend time with her. Some people are like that. They're not committed to keeping the promise if the cost is too high or something else comes up. The other reason why people sometimes break their promises to us is this. Maybe they're not able to keep the promise. Maybe they desperately want to, but it's not within their ability. They don't have the resources. They don't have the time. They don't have the physical ability. Something comes up that keeps them from actually being able to keep the promise. They get in an accident. Whatever, you name it. So we have these two reasons, right? Sometimes promises are broken because the person who made the promise isn't committed to keeping the promise no matter what. Sometimes the promise is broken because they're not able to keep the promise. And we hope, when somebody promises us something, we hope that the promise will be kept. But for some promises, either because they're so extravagant or because of the person who made it to us, sometimes our hope feels a lot more like wishful thinking than any kind of confidence at all. We hope in the vaguest sense of the word, loosest sense of the word. Hope and faith in a person's promises only pays off if the one making the promise is committed to doing what they promised and has the ability to pull it off. If we're honest, some of us are cynics. And to those who, you're there, and by the way, one of the ways you can kind of tell you might be a cynic now is if you think you're a realist, but you always expect that it's not going to come true, you're actually a pessimist and you're probably a cynic. For those of us who are cynics, I want to just remind you, you didn't get here because you don't care. I think that's a misunderstanding in our culture. Some people think, but the person who's cynical is a person who doesn't care. And that's true. Maybe they don't care now. But they didn't get there because they never cared. They became cynics because they did care, right? We had faith in people. We did, and we got burned badly, and it hurt deeply. And so now, well, we don't trust as much as we used to. We used to have faith. We used to trust. We used to have hope. And now we don't. Well, friends, that's the beauty of Christmas. You're like, what? Wait, cynicism, Christmas? How's that going to... Stick with me. Christmas and the rest of Jesus' time on earth give us evidence that God is committed to keeping his promises. I mean, think about it. Jesus showed up. He walked planet Earth as promised. The fact that we have Christmas and the rest of Jesus' life, as we look at that, is evidence that God does keep his promises. And I don't mean to be crass in what I'm about to say next, but I'm saying it because it really is true. Jesus went to hell and back to keep God's promises to us. God had promised us atonement. God had promised us a redemption that we could never get on our own. And Jesus went to hell and back to make that happen. That is proof. That is evidence, right? That God is committed to keeping the promises that he has made to us. But second, Christmas and the rest of Jesus' time on earth prove that God has the ability to pull off what he's promised. I mean, think about it. God in a baby, the infinite and eternal God now has a body and a birthday. That is evidence of extreme power. That you can pull that off. Only God could do that, right? That is evidence that God has the ability to do whatever it is that he would promise to us. But it didn't end there. That's how Christmas starts for us, but it doesn't end there. Throughout the time that Jesus walked this earth, there were miracles galore. Right? Jesus demonstrated that he had power over sickness and the recent sickness the person got, but he also had power over birth defects. He had power over the weather. He demonstrated he had power over animals, power over the matter itself. He could multiply matter. Remember the feeding of the 5,000. Start with 5 loaves, 2 fish, feed 5,000. Right? He had the ability to tell the future. He had the ability to indicate what people were thinking. He had the ability to tell the location of a coin. That's one of my favorite stories where he tells Peter, go out, go fish. You open the fish's mouth, you'll find a coin in the fish's mouth. Miracles galore. God has the ability to pull off what he's promised. It doesn't end there. Throughout his time here on earth, we saw that he had power over the spirit world. And then, of course, at the end, Jesus is resurrected from the dead. He has power over death itself. And when you put all that together, you have to stop and you go, okay, what's missing? I mean, what else could there possibly be that could keep someone from making and being able to keep the promises that they've made? If you've got power over life and power over death and power over the weather and power over thinking and power over the demons and the spirit world and power over sickness and power over everything, and if you can put the eternal in a body, then okay, what else is left? What could possibly thwart him if he wanted to keep a promise? What is beyond his ability? Nothing. So Christmas and what comes after that gives us evidence of God's commitment to keeping his promises, and it gives us proof of God's ability. Therefore, faith in God and hope in his promises makes sense. Faith in some other people and hope in their promises may not make sense. But faith in God and hope in his promises makes sense because he is committed and he has the ability. We could say it this way. Jesus gave us confident hope for Christmas. Yeah, God's Christmas gift to us is confident hope. We have hope that's not just hope like I hope it happens, but hope as in confidence, something that looks more like anticipation because you know it's going to happen. That kind of hope. That's what God gave us for Christmas. I want to take a few minutes to take a closer look at the confident hope that we have in God because of Jesus. We're going to look at a situation that took place, is recorded for us in John chapter 11. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, 3 close friends of Jesus, hoped that Jesus would get there in time to heal Lazarus of his terminal illness. Jesus didn't arrive in time and Lazarus died. And so we pick up the the situation there in John 11, verse 17. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. So he's dead. Dead. Bethany was near Jerusalem, less than 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. And as soon as Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house. And let's look at Martha's conversation with Jesus. This is verse 21. Then Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Yet even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Your brother will rise again, Jesus told her. Martha said, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. We can sum up what Martha was saying to Jesus with this phrase, I believe that. Jesus, I believe you could have healed him. Jesus, I believe that you have authority in heaven, like when you ask for something in prayer, it happens. Jesus, I believe that my brother will rise again someday. I believe that. Statements of belief. Watch what happens next, verse 25. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God who comes into the world. Jesus said there in verse 26, everyone who lives and believes in me. Did you catch the subtle difference? The first half, Martha's conversation was kind of like, Jesus, I believe that. And what Jesus was bringing her to was, yes, you believe that. This will happen and that could happen. But do you believe in me? Do you believe in me? Whoever lives and believes in me will never die. And then she states her conclusion in verse 27. And it's not about another thing that she believes that. She believes, it's about who she believes in. I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God who comes into the world. I'm indebted to the Starting Point studies for pointing this out, that there is a big difference between believe that and believe in. This is one of the things that sets Christianity apart from all the other religions. All the other religions are about believe that. There's a set of beliefs. You believe this, believe this, believe this. Things that you're supposed to believe. Believe that. Christianity is different because it starts by giving us a person to believe in. Or you could say it this way, Jesus didn't come just to give us a list of religious statements to believe. He came to give us someone to believe in. Believe in Jesus. We believe what Jesus said, including his promises to us, because we believe in him. The second thing about our hope that I want us to look at for a couple minutes is this. Our hope is a living hope. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 3, Peter writes this to us. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Because of his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. A living hope. A hope that is alive, right? And did you catch? It is rooted in God's past performance. We have a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. The resurrection makes it so that we can have this hope. It's power. It's going to work in the future. But it's also a good reason to hang on to the hope because we see in God's past performance what he did, right? His ability, his power. He overcame death. So it's rooted in God's past performance, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And this hope includes, this living hope that we have, includes something to look forward to, something off in the future that we are hoping for, we are looking forward to, we are living in anticipation of. Back to verse 3. He has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead and into an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, and unfading, kept in heaven for you. Verse 8. Though you have not seen him, you love him. Though not seeing him now, you believe in him, and you rejoice with inexpressible and glorious joy because you are receiving the goal of your faith, the salvation of your souls. There's something we're looking forward to. Actually, two things. In verse 4, we are looking forward to an inheritance that's kept in heaven. It is an inheritance that nothing can happen to. It's imperishable, it's undefiled, it's unfading. Nothing can happen to it, and it's kept safe and secure in heaven where no one can break in. Nothing can happen to your inheritance. That's what I'm looking forward to. But the other thing I'm looking forward to is the salvation of my soul. Is there in verse 9, right? The day when my salvation in Jesus is complete. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's the future. In the meantime, there's one more thing that this hope brings for us. It's the assurance that our pain has a purpose. Look at verse 5. You are being guarded by God's power through faith for a salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. That's future, right? You rejoice in this, even though now, for a short time, that's the present, if necessary, you suffer grief in various trials, so that the proven character of your faith, more valuable than gold which though perishable is refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Future, inheritance, salvation of my soul. Present. For many of us, the present involves pain. Pain, suffering of various kinds. But that pain is not needless pain. It's not wasted pain. It's not just pointless pain. Pain has a purpose, actually two purposes. You see it in verse 7. The first purpose of the pain that I go through in the present is that pain is proof that my faith is real. I mean, how do you know? How do you know that you really value something? You only know you really value something when you're willing to give up something else valuable to get it. I mean, how does that special person in your life know that you really value them? By what you give up for them. How do you know that you really believe something? By what you're willing to risk for that. What you're willing to lay aside for that. How do you know that your faith is really real? If it's never cost you anything. If it's never forced you to have to make a choice between right? How do you know? And so one of the things that pain does for us is it gives us a chance to choose. Is it worth it, right? Is my faith worth it? Is my testimony, my confidence, my hope in Christ, is it worth it? Pain has a purpose. It gives us the opportunity to find out, do I really believe? It proves, it tests our faith. And when our faith is shown to be genuine, there's a certain amount of joy that comes out of it. Like, yes, I passed the test. Yes, my faith is real. Yes, I would hang on to this even if it costs me something. It's one of the purposes of pain. But the second purpose of pain that I saw in verse 7 is this. It's a layaway payment on our homecoming gift to God. Now, layaway, I think that's a thing of the past, but when I was a kid, that's how it worked. Christmas time was layaway time. The parents would go to the store and they'd pick out what they wanted for you, and they would take it and they would put it on layaway. In the back of the store, there's a department, and you'd put the present there, and you put some money down on it, and every month or every few weeks or whatever, you pay a certain amount more on it, and when it was all paid for, then you could take it home for Christmas. You put it away to keep it safe, and you paid on it, and then you got it. I kind of see that kind of an idea in this verse there in verse 7. He says, your grief in the various trials and the proven character of your faith results in praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. When Jesus comes back, you and I get to see him. Nothing will matter more in that moment than us just being with him. And we will long, I believe, with all my heart, we will long to give him something. We will long for him to get the praise. Why? Because we think he'll deserve it. We're going to, in that moment, we're like, man, all the praise you could have, you deserve it all, and I want to be part of it. God, when you come back, I want to give you praise. I want to give you glory. I want to give you honor because I'm going to be overwhelmed with how much you deserve it. And as you and I go through difficult seasons, and we hang on to our hope in Christ, we hang on to our faith in his promises, it's like making payments on that praise and glory and honor, so that when that day comes, all the payments will be made, and we've got that, and we give it to God as welcome, welcome. This is my gift to you, praise, glory, and honor. And I didn't just get it in the moment. I got it as I lived faithful obedience, hanging on to my hope in the midst of suffering and grief and trials here in the present. Chris Langham wrote a little piece about faith and hope. I want to read it to you because I just really appreciate the perspective he brings. He says this: faith is not blind. Faith sees more. The worldly man sees only today. The pain or pleasure of the moment fills their reality, and they accuse the Christian of not living in reality. Yet a believer sees the present reality just fine, but they do not focus there. In faith, they look forward. They look further ahead and trust in what God has promised. Regret looks back. Frustration looks around, but faith looks forward. Faith fixes our gaze on God's promises and moves us ahead in anticipation, in hope. Isn't that awesome? Faith is not blind. Faith sees more. Faith sees the present suffering very, very clearly. It does not minimize it, but it sees more. It knows that there's more than just hardship, more than pain, more than persecution, more than tribulation, more than temptation. It knows there's more. It knows there's a purpose for the pain. It knows that there's something to look forward to, our inheritance, our salvation. And so it looks forward, it looks ahead in anticipation and in hope. Friends, Jesus gave us confident hope for Christmas. Let's wrap this up. How do you know that someone will keep their promise? You don't. You don't know for sure. You can't. It's impossible because that promise is made in the present, but it's about the future. You don't know for sure. You can't know. But if they demonstrated their commitment in the past, then you have every reason to be cautiously optimistic about what they promised for the future. And if they demonstrated their ability to keep their promises in the past, then you have real reason for hope. You have a version of hope that's more anticipation than wishful thinking. Because Jesus came, we have someone to believe in. Because Jesus came, we live with anticipation, not wishful thinking. Oh, friends, as that reality sinks in and we think about it and all the implications of it sink in as we meditate on it, we have reason to celebrate this Christmas. I pray that you will be driven like me to say, man, I had to celebrate this year.